Okay, some of you may have seen recent headlines showing a new research study out of Stanford University by researcher Chris Gardner looking at twins, the perfect group, comparing an omnivore group of twins versus a vegan group of twins. And the headline is, vegan diet is healthier, so on and so forth. Well, let's go into that. But before we do that, I want to talk about another little bit of research. So there is a study that's going to be performed. They're already collecting data for this on people with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, so the so-called IBD, not IBS, IBD, Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. If that's you and you've used a low-carb ketogenic or carnivore diet to fix that, and I know many of you guys have, and the other thing that's important, it has to be an actual diagnosis. You can't just say, I felt like I had Crohn's. You've either had to have a biopsy or a colonoscopy to prove that you've had Crohn's disease, and it has gone away using one of those diets. Please use the link in the description that I'm going to put in below. That'll put you in contact with the primary researchers. We'll get this published, and again, we're going to get this carnivore message out there, guys. All right, so back onto the twin study. So 22 pairs over 8-week period. Now, before we set that up, who is Chris Gardner? Well, Chris Gardner is a guy that thinks that it is unethical, literally unethical, to study a carnivore diet, right? Because
study that I think a lot of people would like to see performed is the plant-based versus carnivore experiment.
All the mechanisms and the observational data pointed one direction so clearly that it seemed almost unethical to do a randomized control trial. You can't get all the nutrients out of meat. You can't. And fiber, all of us think fiber is one of the nutrients of note that people aren't getting enough of.
Nutritional deficiencies. Yet he's happily able to and willing to study vegan diets, which clearly also have nutritional deficiencies, right? And I would argue that the carnivore diet doesn't really have any. But anyway, that's besides the point. So ethically, he won't do it. Now, he happens to be a vegan himself. Of course, there may be some bias there, perhaps. Maybe not. Maybe. I've actually heard he's a pretty reasonable researcher from other folks I know. But besides that point, there's probably clearly some sort of bias there in the fact that he's a vegan. The study, who was it funded by? Well, in part, it was funded by the Game Changers Foundation, and these guys are the ones that made that vegan propaganda film. And this is also going to be part of another film. Again, so any potential bias there, who knows? Chris Gardner has also taken a lot of money from the Beyond Meat Corporation. So we can see that there may be some financial and ethical conflicts there. It's not saying the data isn't what the data is, but maybe perhaps the design of the study was designed in such a way to make vegans look better. Now, how might that have been? Well, for instance, in the vegan arm versus the omnivore arm, one of the things, well, let's talk about the outcomes first. Vegans had a little bit lower LDL, vegans lost a little bit more weight, and vegans had a little bit lower fasting insulin, right? And so what are the things that might have contributed to that? Well, one, the omnivore diet had more refined grains and more sugar in the diet, right? That could be the whole thing, right? That could be the whole reason for it. You feed people sugar and refined grains, bad things tend to happen. So the more of that you feed them, the worse the outcome is. And that very well could contribute to the vast majority of it. It's also noted that the vegans are 15% less likely to enjoy the diet. So they very likely could have eaten less food, right? So eating less calories perhaps could have also impacted this. It was noted that the vegans were less likely to obtain enough vitamin B12, which is a known deficiency issue. Again, how that would have played out long term. Again, it was an 8-week study, 22 twin pairs. You can't really, and again, you can't really conclude anything about health long term on this particular study regardless. Looking at biomarkers, the weight loss I could not find whether it was just lean mass. It very well could have been lean mass. They also consume far less protein, which would certainly be consistent with perhaps a potential loss of lean mass. So, the study's getting a lot of headlines for vegan is better, but what does it really show? What are some of the potential confounders and some of the potential conflicts that are there? Let me know what you guys think about that. And don't forget, sign up if I talked about if you have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis and you meet the criteria I talked to earlier, please use the link below, sign up. Let's get this study published and we can show some good carnivore research. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.